change in the fundraising sector has never been greater. But innovations in technology are evolving faster than our ability to understand them. Are these advances good or bad? Do they have unintended consequences? And what is the application to the global fundraising sector? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to the Fundraising AI podcast, your up-to-date resource for responsible AI for the global fundraising community, hosted by Nathan Chappell and Scott Rosenkrantz.
All right, we're back for hopefully another episode of the Fundraising AI podcast. Welcome, everyone. Scott and I are about ready to throw both of our computers outside the window. And we're both on a second story, so we'd probably do some damage, I think, if we did that.
I think so.
Yeah.
We're both tech optimists, but sometimes it just bites us in the ass. Regular computer issues, we just can't figure it out. I don't know what it is.
I mean, switching browsers, quitting browsers, restarting computers. We've done it all today. And you know what? At some point, sometimes I feel like, can we just live in like Gen AI world in the metaverse where it just all works somehow? Like, I guess that's optimistic too, you know?
Like just shoot a message to ChatGPT and say, fix my audio, and then it's done.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Are we there yet?
I think that's probably where the disillusionment comes from and the adoption curve. Like you're like, we should already be there, but we're not because we're still having to deal with echoes and other kinds of things. So anyway, everyone, welcome to another episode. We're not going to bitch anymore about our computer woes. We're going to talk about a lot of cool stuff. Well, Scott just shook his head for those that can't see him. He no guarantees there. I won't complain too much. We've got a lot to cover today, and it's been an exciting week in AI. And we also wanted to get back to our roots and talk a little bit about some of the application of AI within a fundraising context today in prospect development. So I'm Nathan Chappell. I'm here with Scott Rosenkrantz on another weekly episode of the Fundraising AI podcast. So Scott, I think when we were going through this week's agenda, quote unquote, I use that term loosely for the podcast, we had a bunch of different things that we wanted to talk about. And this happens every week where we kind of negotiate back and forth on what we have time for. One that I don't know if you brought it up or I brought it up, but I definitely want to get into because you do such a good job at this is really in automation. And you're constantly telling me of how you've like automated your whole life. And it makes me super jealous. And like, I'm still answering emails with 2 fingers. And you're just having Zapier do it. So we'll talk about automation a little bit. And also I think both of our coolest new toys that's helping with that.
For sure.
Let's get into, after that, we'll get into some of our favorite use cases of the week and fundraising AI applied. And then a couple updates on what's going on in the world of AI. And then I think we're going to end up with a conversation on prospect development. Does that sound good? Anything else that we negotiated that I missed?
Maybe some anti-AI sentiment, which is always fun.
Yeah.
Put a finger on the pulse of the conversations that are going on out there.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. I think there's a few things that showed up this week around anti-AI that we can expect to see. And it reminded me really of probably 2017, 2018, when we were working in machine learning, deep learning, where people were saying, basically, this is snake oil and pretending that it was like new and insane, but it actually wasn't. And so, yeah, let's talk about all those things. So I don't know. How about we start out with the coolest, easiest thing, the lowest hanging fruit of the week, which is something that you purchased and then I quickly purchased 12 hours later. Thank you. And thank you to Amazon for delivering it 6 hours after that. So Scott, why don't you get into it? Yeah, this is a cool automation tool and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of Logitech. Within iShot, I probably have 9 to 12 Logitech devices, some being used, some just a collection, right? But they have software that goes with their mice, with their keyboards. Logi Options is this software. It came out, it was in beta for a while, but it's fully deployed now. But they just rolled out a software update, I think last week, that has Logi AI Prompt Builder. And so they sell a mouse now that has a specific AI button on it, but you can really map it to any button if you're using a mouse that works with Logi Options. But what it does is if you highlight text and then you click this button that you map for Logi AI Prompt Builder, it'll open up a window and give you 6 different prompts, pre-built prompts that you can edit, you can revise, whatever. And so basically it'll take whatever I highlighted and I could say, all right, draft an email about this, or turn this into a LinkedIn post, or put this into bulleted format and summarize in 3 sentences. Like, it is such a time saver. I've used it probably 10 times a day, at least since it came out last week, and constantly revising and editing the different prompts that I have in the recipes. And it is just such a cool tool.
So just to go back and distill this down, so everyone, if they weren't following that, so there's a new mouse. I mean, that's powered by the software, Logi Options, that you can, and the mouse has one,
you can,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buttons on it. Yeah, you can use it without the mouse, but we're getting into the mouse right now. So just chill for a second. So I think for most people, if they're like, I just want the easy button, how to use AI more efficiently, the mouse is going to be the way to go, because the thing that you're using all the time anyway. There's several buttons that you can program, but there's one at the top, which is kind of by default. You press that, it opens up this prompt builder, and then it gets like super nerdy from there. So I know when I saw this, I was like, oh, I know why Scott likes this, because you can custom program all of the activities and shortcuts for each of the buttons and do like crazy stuff. Or if you're like me, you just want the easy button and be like, just the one button to just open up prompt builder. I did program my other 2 buttons. One opens up Perplexity in its own window, which I think you did too. And for me, the other button opens up ChatGPT. And so it's just like, without having to open a browser, it just literally just opens up. And that's pretty rad. I mean, it's just like anything that you can do to save a little bit of time.
Right. Maybe it's like a first world problem, because before having this AI prompt builder, I used to have to highlight text, copy it, open up ChatGPT, and then paste it, and then write a prompt. I mean,
And so old school.
It's like 3 minutes, and I can't waste 3 minutes like that.
3 minutes. I mean, I don't know if it'd be hard pressed in 3 minutes to copy and paste, unless you're a really slow copy paster. I don't know.
But really, I always forget the shortcut. I hit Control Start. I do all these different things.
Yeah.
But it saves a lot of time there, but it really just like, it puts all these options right in front of me. And so for me, what it's doing is it's making it less of making ChatGPT an afterthought, right? Like it's so accessible. It's so right there. I have text. I know I want to do something with it. Click this button, open up the prompt builder, and I have 6 different options. And then boom, right away, like it's just done.
Yeah. And in no way we're being paid by Logitech, although Scott really would think that we should be at this point. But
if they want to pay me, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a pretty cool tool. And I'm a pretty diehard Mac person. And so I had a Mac Magic Mouse, and which I really liked, but I ended up buying this just frankly for the simplicity of having at my fingertips the ability to basically just integrate AI just a second faster into what so all right, so that's automation / hardware. Well, it's hardware, software mixed together automation, tip number 1. But why don't we get in a little bit more? We don't have to go into all this. If anyone wants Scott to walk you through all this stuff, I'll leave his cell phone number after this podcast, and you could just call him and he'll do this. I'm just kidding. You're really good at managing Zapier, I think, and that's the hub of probably most of your automation, right?
Yeah, I have Zapier. I probably have like close to 30, 40 different Zaps running at all times. And I really like integrated Zapier with Google Tasks as kind of like my main hub of how to manage different things. So Zapier, for those of you who don't know, it's this software. It's just you don't have to download anything. You just create an account. I think they have a free account. You have certain Zaps, and you can build recipes. You can connect one piece of software to another piece of software that maybe don't have direct integrations built in, right? So simple example, we use Gmail here at Donor Search. I use Google Tasks. Even though they're both owned by Google, there's no easy way to just click on an email and put it into a task. You can drag it, but it just kind of becomes clunky. So Zapier, I have it where if I star an email, it becomes a Google task with the sender name, the subject of the email, and then a link to that email and the body of the email in the task. So like I always know these are emails that I need to get back to, but then kind of went a little crazy and haywire. And so by building out other Zaps and actions and recipes, I have one Google task list that is Asana. We use Asana to manage tasks for our clients. Like if I put a task in Asana, in my Asana task list, it'll automatically create a ticket in Asana for my data science team to know to execute and all this stuff. I have one that can create a draft AI email, right? For me, like we've talked about this before, my living nightmare is staring at a white page and having to write something, right? I'm much better with numbers than I am with words. So if I just have an email that I want to reply to, I put it in this certain task list. Zapier will kick it off to ChatGPT. It already has the built-in prompt. It'll bring it back, put the draft email in my own language in a task for me to just copy and put it into an email. And it just puts all these automations, just saves me so much time, because otherwise I'm just going to think about it and think about it and think about it, but rarely get to it because it's that first step of actually writing out that email.
Okay, so does this like all of that, it sounds impressive and how reluctant I've been to do that. Because my question is usually like, does it actually save you time or is it just cool? Like, do you feel like you're saving time or do you just feel like you're part cyborg when you're doing this and it's just like you've got technology working for you? But because I'm banging away emails and responding to them the old fashioned way.
There's definitely part of the latter that plays into this. Part of me just enjoys building these things and seeing how I can make it better and iterate. So like, even when I build one, it never just stays in its current state. I'm always changing it and improving upon it, right? Iterating. But it does definitely save me time and it helps me keep track of stuff. Like if I didn't have this, I would have so many emails that I just lose track of. And then I see them, I know I need to get to respond to them, but I don't take that first step of actually writing out the email because I can't even get out of my own head about like, how am I going to write it and all this different stuff. So even though ChatGPT is writing out these draft emails for me automatically, I'm not just taking them and running them with it. It's that whole like, it's a start, right? It's the first draft. I make some tweaks, make it more about me, but I don't have to write those 3 paragraphs that are going into that message. So it definitely does save me time and I feel like a cyborg while I'm doing it. And it's a win-win.
But if a listener here has Microsoft Copilot built into like your enterprise level, right? Or not enterprise, but in Teams or in Outlook, or if you're using the Google Gemini email responder, which we don't have access to for security reasons, kind of does the same thing, right? Like gets you started. And I do see a lot of value in just getting you started.
Right. And for me, and this is probably for a lot of people, I'm more efficient when I'm just in one window as opposed to jumping between different pieces of software, right? Yeah. If I have to go into another piece of software and for security reasons, we always have to do like single sign-on and it's just all these steps to even get to what I need to get to. Yeah. If I can build these connectors that it's doing it for me and I could still just stay in that primary screen of whatever I need to focus on, then like I just let other things do the work and I know it's getting done and I can stay more focused without getting distracted.
Awesome. All right. This episode is also not sponsored by Zapier, but if they would like to, Scott's willing to take your money. Any other automations that you're like super into lately that people might want to explore? So Logi options through Logitech, mouse, keyboard, whatever you want to use. You don't need 18 different devices. Zapier, go on. I do think they do have a free account. And then even if you have a paid account, it's pretty cheap. You're into like kind of the next level. I know you put on our agenda Siri shortcuts, which I have just such a love-hate relationship with. Like anytime I spent time to build a Siri shortcut, it's like broken. And then like I just get totally frustrated and want to throw my phone across the room because my lights won't turn on. And then I'm like, just give me the freaking light switch. Like it just drives me nuts. So are you still a fan of Siri shortcuts?
I am. And it's not without fail, right? It's not without issues. I did, especially whenever
for sure. Trust me.
They roll out new software, they change some of the steps and some of the objects. So ones that did used to work don't always work. And then I have hundreds of shortcuts and I probably use 20 of them, right? But I also have a lot of automations that run. Like I have a Ford and I connected it where it locks my car when I walk away because it doesn't do that automatically, but only when I'm not at home. So that way it's never locked in my driveway or in my garage because it doesn't need to be. So like small stuff like that. Or my wife likes to know when I have lunch. So like we can schedule our time together. Every day when I turn on work mode, it'll find my lunch in my calendar and send her when my lunch is and send her when my end of the day is. So
wait, but you live in the same house, right?
We live in the same house. Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah. She's usually on my son's schedule. So trying to figure out schedules like that. I have another one that I have email. There's another service called Fancy Hands that I use that's like $15 a month. And these people I can write them an email and they can call all these different lawnmowers or whatever tasks I need to actually like communicate with people, but I don't have the time to do that. Those emails, because they communicate to me through email, they get lost in my email. So I created an automation that whenever I get an email from them to like ping my phone, ping my watch, and that way I don't lose it. Otherwise, I don't really check my personal email all that much. So like all small things that definitely do keep me getting the things done that I need to get done that otherwise they would just take up more of my time.
I mean, I feel so overwhelmed by everything you just shared all the way. So, I mean, if there are listeners that want to go deep into all this stuff and learn pros and cons, they should definitely not reach out to me. They should definitely reach out to you and get your tips on some of the stuff. It's pretty awesome. I like it. I like watching you do it and I enjoy that. I used to be the total beta tester for a big part of my career. And I got to a point where I was spending time and then things would change and then things would break. And then I just got so frustrated. So not that I'm a late adopter, but I definitely, on those types of things, I think it's also just like how much time do you want to spend doing it versus what the reward is. And it's always that. So I will say when AGI, artificial general intelligence, has come, I definitely want to hang around you because you're going to be in a much better position to essentially master it, hopefully. So we'll see how that plays out for you.
And then just one last one. So this is, I guess it's kind of an automation, but it's using ChatGPT in a way that I haven't before. I think everybody's tried to have it like draft an email or respond to an email, but it's never in your language, right? And I never really knew how to get it to be in my language. So I found this clip on YouTube. It told me to take a number of emails that I've written myself, right? Put them into like a Word document, have ChatGPT, feed it ChatGPT and say, can you give me the language, the sentence structure, the tone, and there was something else about it. Like, what is the style guide essentially for how this writer writes, right? And I took that output and I put it into my personal settings in ChatGPT. So now I say, whenever you're going to write an email, use this style guide as your email.
That's awesome. Yeah, like definitely send the link over so we can put that in the show notes. I think that's probably the first practical thing you shared all morning. So
probably.
I'm just kidding. I think they're rad. So let's move on. I think that leads me to what I think my favorite use case is of AI for the week from a fundraising perspective. And we talked about this before. We talked about this idea that, ChatGPT or whatever you're using, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, can do is essentially get you started, can automate things. And so one of the use cases that we talked about on the Donor Relations podcast was a person waking up and saying, today's the best day ever. I get to write the auction descriptions for the baskets at our gala. Said no one ever. Like that just was never been a thing. Ever. And we shared on that. The example would be like, hey, write this description for this basket. And that was several months ago or whatever. And the reality is, I was thinking about this over the weekend, is that you don't even need to give it anything by using vision computing. Literally just put all the auction items on a table, take a photo of it, load that photo into ChatGPT and say, write an auction. These are items that are going into a basket for auction, write a description. And it will do it phenomenally well. So like even in a few months, advice and things that we thought were transformative a few months ago are like a whole different level. Like, which is so crazy. Like, it's just like vision and multimodal. So for people that don't know what multimodal is, meaning that you can use a large language model, a lot of them require you to have the paid version, will allow you to use an image by either taking a picture of your screen or actually loading an image or attach a document like you were just talking about. You can also talk to it and it can talk to you. So that's what multimodal is. It just is several modalities of interacting with it. Vision is just a tremendous promise and probably totally underutilized. Like if you have an issue on your computer and there's like this thing, it's like, I can't figure out am I getting this error? Just take a screenshot of the error, put it in there and say, help me out. And it's going to help you out. Like it's step by step. It's pretty amazing. I've also done it with games. And I shared this last week. It's like, take a screenshot of a game and like, what's my best move in this game? So don't play Wordle.
Well, that's just pure cheating. I'm going to play against you in a game now.
You should not play against me anymore. So no, the reality is I was doing this with a game called Quirkle, and I was just testing to see if GPT could understand the complexity of different moves, and it didn't. It actually only understood linear moves. There's like, you can play offensively or defensively. Had no concept of that. It will only prioritize like what you should do based on what will yield the highest score for that move, but not to win the game. So it was actually not very good on that type of thing. But it does help you explain the rules of games, which is really well. And I just can't read through pages of things on how to understand a game. So all that to say, my tip of the week for fundraising is no more having to write auction descriptions. Just take a picture of whatever is going in the basket and say, this is a basket at our auction, tell a little bit about it. And it's going to actually understand every item and then highlight the items in significance. And so that's pretty cool. The other thing, did you have any fundraising tips this week?
I did have a similar one. So we did, again, we said that we were going to do a prospect research or prospect development kind of ways that they can use ChatGPT or Gen AI or whatever. And so I went through my typical exercise of having it, you're a Gen AI coach and you work with different organizations on how to use a tool. Tell me how I would use it as a prospect researcher, right? It's not always wins, it's not always hits, but some of the ones that come out were really great. But outside of that, one of the examples it gave me, I don't think it would fall under a prospect research or a prospect development team, but it brought me back to like PTSD of when I would run campaigns and have to put together the naming opportunities for a new building, right? And you have to go through all the different like emergency rooms and all the different offices and all that. And like this one should be 25,000, that one should be 35. Like I hated that. That just thinking about it like gets my blood boiling. That would be another perfect use case of send a picture to ChatGPT and have it at least start, right? Like it's not going to be perfect, but like you just need something to get started and then make some of those tweaks along the way. But if I had ChatGPT, I would be doing that all day long.
Yeah. I think that's the theme, right? Is that, and I was doing a training for an organization this week where when we talk about the return on investment of AI, it's not about just raising more money. It's not just about efficiency. It's in pretty much every single test. And we're talking mostly about generative AI right now because predictive AI is about efficiency. It's about taking lots of data and creating precision from it. But generative AI is really about helping you do your work better. So with a higher degree of accuracy, faster. So you're actually saving time, and also with less burnout. So you don't have your blood boiling and you don't have to dread that task. Even if it's an email, just getting you started or reviewing something or just giving you something to respond and say, I like it or don't like it. Let's play with this. I think so. Better, faster, less burnout. Those are things that every nonprofit professional I've ever met could use in spades. And so I think that's really getting out of that mindset that this is and Mallory talked about this on our podcast, that this is like binary, good or bad, but thinking about this as this co-pilot, thanks Microsoft. But it's such a good analogy of like augmenting your intelligence and allowing you, like supporting your better, faster, less burnout. If those are things that any of those three things that you could benefit from, you're in the right place because just start using this, spend at least 10 hours using it. I want to get into the word hallucination just for a second, because in the same training I was doing, I don't know if I brought up the question, or it was a webinar I was doing, and Microsoft and Google and CJ Orr, who's on our advisory council, was hosting it. And I don't know if someone mentioned hallucination, and someone in the chat was like, what is this hallucination thing that you're talking about? And it made me realize like, wow, like I there are a lot of words that we're still using that people they're just starting their AI journey. They're not used to. So I was doing a workshop yesterday and I had people raise their hand, like how many people know the term hallucination? And I think one person maybe out of like 40 or 50. And so all this to say is like, sometimes I think you and I need to step back several, and that was advice that we got from Kelly Heck. So shout out to Kelly, step back several steps and explain some terms. And so feel free to explain hallucination in your own terms, like what it is. The encouraging part of it is that it was a big concern about large language models and Gen AI for a while is becoming less and less of a concern. But why don't you share just kind of a layman's terms, what it represents?
My personal definition, I don't know how accurate it is, so feel free to revise it, but it would be when an LLMs are really predicting what the next best word is going to be, right? And sometimes they predict words that sound really good, but aren't actually accurate. So an example of a hallucination is Ethan Mollick, who I don't think he's going to be sponsoring us, but is in the Logitech and Zapier bucket. He asked ChatGPT to put together some of his sources or quote some of his stuff, write a blog in his language. And it wrote out and cited some articles that he never wrote and gave quotes that he never said, right? No one ever said them, at least nobody that found. So it sounds good, it sounds legitimate, but it's really just the model predicting that this is something that could be accurate and fits in line with the rest of the context.
Yeah. So,
I also do that, right? I misattribute things to individuals, right? Like I say something that happened that maybe didn't really happen and think it did. So
you're a constant liar.
I hallucinate a lot.
No, humans, we said this from the day one, like who also hallucinates? Humans, right? Like it's like, oh yeah, that's going to be on a Tuesday. And you have like no idea what it's going to be on, but you're just making that up. There is something to be said to that. The difference with hallucination, I think, is that it is trying to predict what word comes next. And if it doesn't know the word, it just makes it up. And it will make it up in a very confident manner. So there's the famous attorney story who actually was under pressure to like deliver their rebuttal for a case and had GPT provide all this, the precedent for a case, and turned out it literally just all the case law just made up. But I will say that in that Microsoft Google thing I was doing, so that hallucination is now down to less than 5% and becoming less and less of a thing. So I say that because if people say, hey, don't use AI because it hallucinates, this goes back to what Scott and I have been saying since the beginning. It's like not a trust then verify. You should, as a nonprofit, verify then trust. So use AI for things that your job is not dependent on. And if it is dependent on it, make sure that you validate it and verify it. One simple way of doing this is ask ChatGPT. Perplexity does this automatically. Others, I think Copilot does it automatically, is ask for the sources. So if it gives you an answer and it's really important for your job, say, what are the sources for the information you just gave me? And have it give you the actual sources and the links for those things. So it's really not something to be afraid of. I was a little surprised at how few people are really heard about it or thinking about it. And I don't want it to be a deterrent. I think let's just use that as a jumping point to the anti-AI sentiment that we heard a little bit this week. You saw it. I think you brought it up first because you were going back to where we started with Logi options and reading, I think it was just the user feedback. And I thought that was interesting and related to an article that I read this week on anti-AI sentiment. So share kind of the context there.
Yeah. So I was playing around with the Logi mouse, and I was in the software, and I went to the forum to make a suggestion of how they might be able to make it better, or new features, something like that. And I was looking at previous comments in the forum to see if other people were saying the same thing. And they were not. They were saying things like, get rid of this AI asterisk, right? They were swearing. They were very, very, very upset, very angry. There were some people saying, I'm a commercial artist. Like, I will never use this AI BS. So please don't bog me down with it. Like, the top 20 comments were all like violently against. Somebody said that they would rather cause harm to themselves than use AI. And a pretty explicit content. Like,
people are so extreme.
It is very, very extreme. And it does kind of bring us back to when we were doing predictive model. Like, someone mentioned to you that you were causing harm to our industry by introducing machine learning predictive models 8 years ago, right? Like,
to me, it feels like the past is repeating itself. And I think it really comes from the fear of change, right? In the IMF reports that showed that 60% of all jobs in developed nations are going to be changed, not replaced, but changed in some way by AI. I think that causes a lot of that fear. And I think in a lot of ways, I think people dismiss fear by trying to poke holes or kind of cause dissension. And this other thing, I was actually listening to a podcast, and it was AI Daily, I think. And they had a clip from Tucker Carlson on Rogan, and essentially starting out by saying that he agreed with Ted Kaczynski, which rough start, that AI was going to kill us all. But it got pretty extreme. Like we shouldn't be a slave to AI. We need to strangle it in the crib. And it's like, and we shouldn't feel bad about it because it's not alive. And I'm like, wow, this AI sentiment. Now, I think there's going to be more of this that comes because bad actors, right, will use AI to do bad things. But I don't want any of this to be a deterrent for nonprofits. Like, there are ways to mitigate this. And I think when I'm always putting on my responsible, beneficial AI hat, and the reason why we started FundraisingAI was to say, look, this is a transformative, truly exponential technology that's going to shape society. It can be used for good or it could be used for bad. Let's use it for good. And let's put a framework out into the world, which we did last year, the framework for responsible AI, which is at fundraising.ai/framework, that any person or nonprofit or tech company can use to ensure that their AI is doing less harm. And I see all this. I would say more people you should expect to hear more of this, especially if there's a big hack and power grid goes down or something like that. It's going to say, well, all AI is bad. The reality is, and again, going back to what we're just talking about with the efficiencies and automations, is that nonprofits are traditionally under-resourced, underfunded. And to be honest, to have tools like AI, especially predictive AI, to help you create clear focus from all of your data, and generative AI to activate those insights, is so powerful to do your work better, faster, with less burnout. This is like almost made to order for the nonprofit sector. So I just be on the lookout for it. I think we're going to talk more, for sure, that we're going to talk more about AI, anti-AI sentiment in the future as it comes out. It's truly an arms race, country to country right now. I'm reading the book Chip Wars right now, talking about the race for silicon chips and how it moved from Silicon Valley to Taiwan. And it's just like, it's amazing how much money is being poured into chip manufacturing, which powers AI. So there's going to be a lot more of this that's going to come in the near future.
Yeah.
Any insights on, I know we're pretty much at time, on the prospect research, prospect development, prospect management side? Did ChatGPT come up with some good examples that you...
There were some good ones. So I started as a prospect researcher, so it kind of brought me back to my glory days, right? My home. And I remember I used to have this sheet that had like 50 different resources on it. And I would check each one off and put the value after I did some research on this person that they had stock of this amount. And so again, if you have a document like that, I don't know how many of them are handwriting those anymore, but if you have a document like that, feed that into Vision ChatGPT and have it put together a dossier on this individual based on all the content you pull together. Or if you're tracking all that in Excel or something, feed all that into ChatGPT. Again, you don't have to give it personal information. You could say for person A that has all this information, create a summary, right? It gave me about 30 different examples, but one that I thought was interesting was drafting a memo to articulate the case for investing in prospect development resources like research tools and staff, right? Like,
brilliant.
To your point, everybody's under-resourced, right? And overworked. So if you need to make a compelling argument for why you should have X tool or B tool, make ChatGPT build that case for you.
I think that lesson, and we could end on that, probably transcends to all other, like every area, right? And when people would historically call me or call you and be like, hey, how do I make a case to my boss that we should be able to buy this tool or whatever? I mean, the best thing you could ever do is go to GPT and be like, how can I use AI in my job that does X, Y, and Z? And you can get a lot of information from that. I mean, it's amazing. I think it's one of the most underutilized things because it's like already there and our brain is still wired to think of like binary answers, like it can only do this or this. And reality is like, honestly, for every person waking up every day thinking about, it's like I have a consultant sitting across my desk in a chair just waiting for me to ask it a question. A consultant, an intern, an expert, whatever you need, give it that persona and then ask it like, hey, you're my fundraising consultant. And I'm looking for ways that I can use AI in prospect research or prospect development and prospect management. What are the top 3 ways I can do that? Oh, that's interesting. Let's explore number 1 a little bit more. Like, what do you mean by that? And oh, cool. Can you give me ideas on how I can take that thing to my boss and make a case for this thing? It's all there. You have to unlock that mind shift in your brain to not think of the answers or the abilities of Gen AI in binary terms and just think of it as a completely iterative fluid.
Yeah. And there's a never-ending resource that you could just bounce ideas off of. So just start testing it out. Start somewhere. And again, the good rule of thumb, I forget where we heard this, but for things that you don't like doing, let it do the first draft and you revise. For things that you do like doing, you do the first draft and let it revise. Right. So leverage off of what you're good at, but feed off things that you don't want to do.
Yeah. And look at ways to incorporate vision. I think vision from that multimodal perspective. Cannon Brooks shared this when he was being interviewed. Cannon's a longtime prospect researcher. And he wanted to know, he knew that this one donor that he was researching had a certain type of airplane. He just grabbed a picture of the airplane off Google, fed it into ChatGPT and said, what is the average lease payment and maintenance on this airplane? And so, I mean, honestly, just brilliant ways to incorporate vision with text and audio to just get a better, more holistic answer. And so don't limit yourself to just the things that your fingers can type, but really think about like, what are all the different things that a way a person is represented and how would I actually distill that information? So I think that's all we have time for today. It always goes so much faster. We've got a laundry list of things to talk about again next week. And by next week, who knows? Who knows who's going to own who or be working where and the other cool things that we're going to hear in the nonprofit AI space. So, all right.
We'll
Scott,
still be here though.
We'll be here. We'll be here with bells on. So yeah, it's always great. Scott and I look forward to spending time with you. Definitely, if you like this, please like and subscribe. It's how we continue to get this message and the content out to more users. And if you don't like it, don't tell anyone. It will be our little secret. All right, Scott, take us home.
Right. Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. Let us know what you want to hear, what's helping, how this is helping you, any questions you have that we can answer. And let's keep this conversation going.
Awesome. All right. Take care, everyone.